Hey,
How's it going, Martin? This
what's
is
up, man?
Adrian. I don't know if you recognize my name from the chat. How are you?
Uh, I'm not sure. What's up?
Not much. So I guess how long do you expect to hold SRPT, or what is your exit target? Are you looking
Uh,
for?
I think it'll go back to 70. I mean, I don't, I think it'll probably take a quarter. Um, it's not going to
You think it'll
rocket.
be?
It's not going to shoot right back up. It's probably going to take a few months at least.
I saw they had catalyst in second half of this year for 903.
Yeah.
Is that going to provide any value, or do you think that's just like indication expansion? I didn't look
No,
into
that's
it.
a different. I think that's a different drug. So for they have a big pipeline, and you're getting that for free. So if you think about the base
Okay.
business, what is $1 billion in revenue worth for their base business? I would say it's worth 2 or 3 billion, maybe more. Arguably, it's worth like 5 or 6 billion because they don't have any costs in that business. So it's basically just net
Yeah.
income. So just on the PMO business alone, their old three drugs, it's 900 million
Yeah.
revenue. It's like 800 million in cash flow. Like they could just monetize that. Maybe they should do that. That's a good idea, actually. Maybe I'll send that along. But if they monetized that, and sold it or royalty capped it, like, the business, just that business alone is worth like $50. Then you got the gene therapy. This thing's pretty controversial. You know, they were launching the drug. The launch is going worse than they thought, but it's still going to do over 1 billion in revenue. So what's that worth? Be conservative, say it's worth 3 billion. Now you're up to 6 billion if you're conservative for both drugs. If you're not, you're up to 10 billion. So to me, it's like you can't lose in this thing. And then to your point, there's a pipeline too. So you just have to wait. I mean, when stocks, here's a management team that has just basically fumbled over and over again. They have kind of a weird relationship with the FDA or this guy Vinay. Now he's in charge. They could have managed that relationship maybe a little better. So they sort of fumbled that. For me, I'd have my ears to the ground. I'd already know the right people who were kind of placing the right people in this administration. And maybe they just caught unaware, but I've known about a lot of the administration appointments for a while. And if I've known about them, sure as hell they could have known about them. And,
Yep.
you just try to warm up to these people and try to get like a good relationship going. And this guy Vinay is trashing them in public. And now he's the boss of the FDA. And that's scary to the company and the shareholders. But, over time that fear will disappear as sort of nothing happens. And then, so I don't think he can do much anyway. But aside from that, the fumble on the execution of this product, it makes stockholders who are very emotional angry. Like a guy at Fidelity can just snap his fingers and say, I want to sell all my Sarepta. I don't trust this management team anymore. And it doesn't
Where,
matter what the value is.
yep.
I invest on trust. I can't trust these guys anymore. I'm out. And that's fine. But it creates distortions in the share price that allows people to jump in and, make it work.
Do you think they're going to put up for like a vote or anything, like an activist investor? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, an activist could do really well here. I don't know what will happen. I haven't heard any rumblings, but obviously an activist could be insanely profitable because you could drive the company to a sale pretty easily. They have a partnership with Roche. Roche is actually known to be a hostile takeover. They're one of the few companies that do them. Most companies won't do a hostile. Even banks won't bank a hostile. Like I think most banks like JP Morgan will not back you to do a hostile takeover. They won't lend into the deal. Roche has plenty of cash. So they don't need a bank, but they could. I think they wanted to buy the whole company. They settled for European rights, so they could just basically close out the stream, close out the deal, by doing a tender offer. But it's a dicey situation. One of the real problems is that this noise creates a problem for demand because patients and families, they watch all this stuff. Doctors, they're not as close as we are, but they may get a reputation where they back off a little bit and say, I don't know if I want to use this product. I've heard rumblings that it's not so great and this and that. Every little piece of noise counts. So if you're, a drug company, you want to clamp down on that noise. You don't want anybody talking any shit about you under any circumstances. So
what are the chances they hire Peter Marks or put him on retainer, you think?
It's not a bad idea. It doesn't help that much. FDA is a weird place. If you've ever dealt with them, it's just a weird bureaucracy. It's a much bigger organization than you think. Like tens of thousands of people work there, and approvals are almost never contentious. Here, it's this debate as to whether or not kids who are very sick deserve leniency. But the word leniency is a psyop in the first place, because of course they deserve leniency. Who doesn't want to help a dying kid? It's a question of, do we want to compromise medical standards, which sounds like you're doing them a favor, but you're not. You're actually probably hurting them by compromising medical standards. So in some ways, I agree with Vinay's philosophy, but I also don't think you can revise history. Otherwise, we'd have to go back and look at every single drug the FDA has ever approved. 6,300 approvals. It doesn't make sense to go back and go through every single one of them and say, oh, well, actually, we shouldn't approve this and we should have approved that. And, the past is the past, and the FDA doesn't go back and second guess its own work unless, look, there's some emergency where 20 people just died of this drug and we didn't know that it would cause you to, grow a third arm. But, that's fairly rare. So, it's a dicey situation, but, it's patience. Buffett said, the market transfers profits from the impatient to the patient. So a lot of people are being impatient, selling it, they're frustrated. There's been a lot of blows to the company, and this was the last straw for a lot of people, so they're capitulated, and that's where I want to buy. I wish I could have waited, but it is what it is.
Same here.
Yeah.
No, and I liquidated probably half, and now I'm just waiting for hopefully all the blood to wash out, and I'm waiting on a good entry. But I guess kind of on the Charles River note, are you looking at any other CDMOs? I think I asked in the chat, are you able to work with CDMOs at all?
Yeah, I don't. I like being in software, so I'm kind of fine with that. I could do a med tech, a CDMO. I could do a lot of stuff. I could probably even do biotech, but I like what I'm doing now. In terms of the industry, Charles River just seemed like an obvious buy, and there's companies like this. I was looking at Estee Lauder yesterday, so. Estee Lauder is, depending on the year of earnings, around 10 times earnings, but they need a turnaround, and they need to get back to the earnings flow they were in before. And you never know what quarter the turnaround will happen, or if the turnaround will happen. But typically these big companies, they'll grab a McKinsey, they'll change up some leadership, hire some people, and they figure shit out. And they may not go all the way back to huge growth, but all they have to do is fix up some stuff, and usually you can get a turnaround. And if you bet on that turnaround, the multiple expands and the earnings expands, and you can get a big win. In the meantime, the company can buy back stock, make acquisitions, whatever. And Estee Lauder's brands are really recognizable; they're not going anywhere. But you don't know what quarter the turnaround will happen. So in Charles River, the turnaround happened literally this quarter. We got very lucky, but we might buy Estee Lauder and wait on it for a year before their new makeup line or whatever it is does really great. So, it's it's a buy, but you can never time it exactly because it takes time for the turnaround plans to work. Sometimes the turnaround plans fail. In the case of Sarepta, you got a similar situation. They were kicking ass. They had $400 million in revenue for Q4 on this drug, Elevidys. I couldn't believe it. That's a crazy number for a brand new drug. And then they did three.
Marketing? Or?
No, I think
The
it
marketing
was.
team, or
Well, yes, they, as somebody saying in the chat, they kind of own Duchenne muscular dystrophy. They got all the drugs in that space, or all theirs, but so I think they were able to fulfill a lot of orders, and now they have a little less demand. So the question becomes like, can they get the concerns of the community down? But to me, as a value investor, I don't really care about that. What I care about is, what is the worst case scenario? And the chance that the FDA pulls it seems unlikely. And even if they can't get the community to really embrace the drug hugely again, it'll still sell like 500 million or a billion. There's a lot of people with DMD, and they all want a shot. They'll do anything for their health, and the drugs, millions of dollars each patient. So it doesn't take a huge amount of patients.
you're there.
Yeah, exactly. 100 patients a year is all you need, and there are people that will try anything for their kid in this disease, and as they should. And insurance hasn't shown any reluctance to pay for it, so I'm pretty bulled up. I mean, I think they're a really smart management team. They obviously fumbled, this quarter, but what's a quarter? Is this drug going away? I doubt it. The price is $3.2 million.
Okay. Yeah, that's like 125 patients, and you're already over.
Yeah. I mean, there's every year, I want to say there's 1,000 DMD kids born, roughly. So, it could easily be a $3 billion annual. And, it's going to grow a little slower than we thought, which usually is a cope. I mean, it's going to be a smaller product than we thought. And that's fine. But at this price, it doesn't have to be a $5 billion drug. It can be a $1 billion drug, which, again, last 2 quarters were three. Let me get them again. They were like
384.
Yes, 384. And then Q1 I was so fucked last night that I didn't even put the number in my model, but it was like 320 or something. So, like, you annualize that, that's 1.5 billion. So,
flat. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he said that Q2 will be down and then they'll recover. So, like, even if you annualize that, you're still talking about 1.2, 1.3 billion. So, you add that to the 900 they're doing, that's 2 billion. I mean, I can't see why you wouldn't pay 5 times for that. And the market cap and enterprise value is roughly the same. It's at 3-ish billion, 3-4 billion. So, it seems like an easy double, but again, you just pissed off the whole biotech investor community that owns the stock. You just, royally fucked them. And a lot of these people, because you just gave this guidance, and it was really bullish guidance, and now you're saying, I was a little too optimistic.
Yeah, February to May, we're making a $300 million decrease.
More, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy, like $600 million decrease in guidance. What changed in 3 months? And obviously they partially, it was the tragic, death of one patient. But what's interesting is not many hedge funds are in the stock. So this is and maybe some of them were shorted. This is a pretty good opportunity to potentially get long as a value play. And, one of my friends, there's 2 or 3 really big biotech hedge funds, including Baker Brothers. I don't see Baker in the stock. And I don't see those other 2 hedge funds I'm thinking of in the stock. I guess if I include RA, there's maybe 4. So, at least on the value side, this is a pretty compelling.
Someone might be cleaning up soon. We see a spike here, hopefully.
Yeah, let the impatient guys who don't trust management and hate the idea of owning this stock, sell, and then stable long-term value guy can buy it. So Elevidys, question on patent on Elevidys. It's a gene therapy, so there's no patent really. There's no generic pathway. You can't make a generic virus. It's never been done.
Yeah, it's gonna be like good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should just make your own drug.
Yeah.
At that point, or biologic. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the third ever gene therapy FDA approved, third or fourth. So there's just no generic possible for it. There's not even generics for ADCs yet. So we got a long way before, we're seeing that. Anyway, thanks for calling, brother.
Appreciate it, Martin.
See you. Okay. So I made the line open. I brought the line open for the shit talker. Where'd the shit talker go?